Hey, this is Deo. I am super excited. Welcome to Persevere to Excel podcast. And the topic for today is, how do you handle the unexpected of either being fired or being let go by your employer? I went through an experience about 3 years ago where an employer that I was working for, they had some dramatic cut into their budget that resulted around 35 to 45% of the employees in that company had to be let go. And unfortunately, I was one of the person that ended up being let go with other of my colleagues. And part of this podcast is to talk about how do you deal with that? How do you handle that? And what do you do to kind of get back on your feet in order to move forward? So what actually happened was within my career, I've had the opportunity to work for so many different companies, from education institutions, government jobs, nonprofits, and tech companies. And I started to be more intrigued around the technology space when I was involved with a program at a university that we designed a coaching model, and it was a competency-based education program that was super innovative. And part of that, we relied on the technology to be able to deliver the curriculum. Fortunately, we had an internal team that worked with us that were also building this technology platform that we were using from scratch. And that technology platform was able to gain a lot of momentum, and we were able to deliver our curriculum based on that model, which was incredible because what we were doing was so new. So I ended up transitioning away from the university, and I ended up starting working for that technology company. I was super excited. They were doing some really innovative work, cool, just cool stuff that they were building. And my role there was almost like an internal consultant, where I would work with the outside partner to try to figure out what student success was going to look like for their model, and making sure that, the core requirements that our team needed, that they were able to gather. And what we ended up finding out was most of the partners, what they were trying to design and build was so new that they needed extra support in order to kind of drive them forward so they can actually utilize the tools that we had. So part of that, I traveled all over the country with a good colleague of mine who kind of oversaw the education aspect. And I love the work that I was doing. I worked with K-12, I worked with university, I worked with just nonprofits or organizations that were coming up with their own curriculum that really liked the model of what we were designing. I was with the organization for about 8 months. And during that 8 months, actually, I was with the organization for 9 months, but during the 8 months, things were moving very well. I was making a little bit more money. And at the time, my wife and I, we own a multifamily, and we were looking at actually transitioning and buying a single family home and keeping our multifamily, and everything was going well. So we actually found a home that we were going to purchase, and we were in contract, and everything was going well, and we're super excited. And the work that I was doing for the company, everything just seemed to align. And I'm excited. I'm like, wow, this is really good momentum. I've done a lot to get to where I am now. And it was like a forward projection in my career, in my life as a whole. So one day I walked into the office, and I had a couple of meetings planned out that morning. And all of a sudden, my actually direct supervisor was in town because we had a remote culture. She said, hey, we're going to cancel some of the meetings we have this morning. There's another meeting that's going to occur. And I was like, oh, okay. Sometimes, we had to, it was an agile space. So sometimes you had to shift, at times. So it was nothing new. And the environment and the feeling of that morning was just so different. I was like, oh, what's going on? So then we were called into, I was scheduled for another meeting with different members in there. And I wasn't too surprised about it because, we worked as groups. So sometimes you had multi-team members within a particular project. So when I walked into the conference room, there was actually one of my colleagues in there. And he made a joke about, he's like, oh man, like when I thought that this meeting was happening, I thought that I was getting fired. And then now seeing all of you guys in here, I'm like, whew, I'm not getting fired. So we all laughed about it. We joked around. A couple of minutes goes by, and the CEO and the different leadership team walk into the conference room, and I can tell right away by the CEO's face that something was wrong. And he couldn't help it, and he was transparent, and he said, hey guys, I've let you guys down. And I was like, oh man, what's going on? And he informed us that because the company didn't meet its quota, that we were being let go. And it was an interesting moment for me, because right away when I heard that, it was less about being let go and having to find a new job. It was really more about the other commitment that I've made. So I was in contract trying to process of purchasing a home. I had a multifamily, moving into a single family. My wife was really looking forward to it. My family is looking forward to it. And then I'm like, holy crap, what's going to happen now? I can't, what do I do? So that was the initial thought in my head. One of the things that I've always had my own sandbox where I did side jobs on top of my 9-to-5 job. So I wasn't too scared about kind of closing the gap and finding other opportunities. So right away in my head, I was like, all right, I'll just have to shift and find, other opportunities. But so in that moment, as the announcement was made, where my heart went was on this amazing commitment that my wife and I made about purchasing this home. And what am I going to tell her? So it was very surprising to all my colleagues to hear the announcement that we're being let go. They were very impacted by it. I was too. I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed the different talent. I mean, there were some serious skills within the organization, different members that I got to collaborate and work with on a daily basis. And I remember it was just so strange. Like, I'm used to traumatic experiences in my life. So being let go from a company, it's not really like, you know what I mean? For me, it's not like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? The world's going to end. And I didn't become, despiteful. I didn't like, it was just more of like, oh man, like I'm going to miss this place. I'm going to miss, we had so much opportunity and potential to really, do some amazing stuff at the company. So I remember sitting at my desk, kind of packing my stuff up, and I'm still kind of reflecting on, what am I going to tell my wife? And the reality is, it's like the unexpected is something that you can't prepare for, regardless of how prepared you are, right? Like the initial impact of something, an announcement or a news being given to you about a certain thing that you weren't ready for, it can only meet you at that moment, and you got to figure out, what do you do with it? And for me personally, stress and negative emotion and feeling is not really what I gravitate towards. So right away, I needed to channel a different energy that was going to lift me up and keep me moving. I knew for sure everything was going to be okay. So I started packing my stuff. I went to the CEO and I just said, hey man, thank you so much for giving me a chance to be part of this team and including me in this amazing opportunity. And I'm very grateful for that. And I know that, in the near future, we'll probably collaborate and work on certain things. I wanted him to know that regardless of, things not working out, I was grateful for the opportunity he provided to me. And I also then went to the chief operating officer, who I kind of directed back to. And I said, hey, same thing. Thank you so much for giving me a chance, for allowing me to be here. And I started packing my stuff. I saw some of my colleagues. I said, thank you. It was great working with you guys. We'll keep in touch. And right away, as I packed my stuff, I knew for sure that I wasn't going home. So where I live, I have some different places where I go to do different work. Like I said, I've always had my own sandbox. So I know that, there's a local community college where I go there to do work sometime. Well, I used to go there when I didn't have my own space. And there's another university close by where I go to the library. So right away, I knew for sure that I wasn't going to go back home. I was going to go to one of those places and just start cranking it. So I got in the car and I was kind of still shaking a little bit in terms of like, how am I going to break this news to my wife? What am I going to tell her? She was really looking forward to this. But then at the same time, I also realized there was nothing that I did personally to contribute to that decision of me getting let go. And, it's about forward momentum. So, unfortunately, that's what occurred. And then we got to figure out a way to move forward. So then I said, you know what, I'm not going to call her. I'll wait to talk to her until in the evening. So I ended up driving to one of the locations where I go for quiet time to do some of my side work. Open up my laptop and I started cranking it. I started sending inquiries out to different businesses in terms of speaking, collaboration, consulting. I already had some other stuff in the pipeline that I was working on. So I just continued to make sure that I was confirming that everything was going to be okay. I also had some sort of a lead for a job as well. So right away, I was just, I plugged in. And I think this is a really important lesson for some of my listener is that, it's not about eliminating the risk. It's about accepting the consequences. Because, working for a startup, regardless of how much money they're paying you or any company, at any time they can lose money. So if that's where all your eggs are, it's always going to be a risk in order to figure out what financial stability is and how do you pay for stuff that you've committed to. So for me, the consequences of what happens if things don't work out was always in the back of my head. Even now, like in everything that I do today, the consequences of something not working out, I have to accept on both ends, if it's a positive consequence or a negative consequence. So when I was in that car driving to that space, I accepted the negative consequences that happened of this company not having enough money to keep everybody and let going almost 30% of the team. So as I was driving to the space, I just kept reflecting. I'm like, everything's gonna be all right. Just crank it up. You'll be good. You'll be good to move forward. And I ended up, once I went to the library, I did my thing. I sent some stuff out, and then that evening I ended up going home. And I waited until my kids went to sleep. And I told my wife, hey, I got to tell you something. About 15 to 20 of us were let go today at work. And I was one of the person. I'm very sorry. This will definitely jeopardize us being able to buy this single family home currently. And I was like, it's going to be okay. We'll figure out what we need to do. She was really impacted by that. It really hit her heart really, really big because we lived in a multifamily that we purchased. We had tenants on the second floor. So, she was ready kind of to move on. But for me, it's like, I'm even grateful that we have a home. I'm grateful that we have a multifamily, where a good percentage of our mortgage is covered by that. So like, there's other stuff that I was looking at that I was like, this is going to be okay no matter what. So I told her that, hey, listen, if things don't work out with the home, it's going to be okay. I'll work hard. I'll make sure, within the next year, a year and a half, we'll be able to go back to the market and purchase a single family. And I just need you to trust me that things are going to work out. I already had things in place. We had a severance for about a month where I was going to still receive a paycheck from the company. And I already had other consultant and speaking stuff that was going to bring in some income. So, I needed to have that grounding before engaging with my wife because, I'm the only person that works in my family, even though she has the hardest job as a mother, taking care of my 3 children. I needed to make sure that she knew that I had our back, that it's going to be okay. And I think my composure and also being able to collect myself and finding that space that allowed me to be grounded allowed her to also trust the next phase that we're going to go into, to trust the process. So she was very concerned about losing the home. We actually ended up losing that single family home because we couldn't prove that I was employed for longer than 6 to 8 months, especially where I just got let go from the company I was working for. And but that's just life, right? Like it's just material things as well. Anyways, it comes and goes. So And we were able to move forward from that. Anyway, I ended up finding another opportunity for a full-time job. So within a month, I transitioned to another company that I worked for. But yeah, this is an encouraging podcast for you as you hear the story of the unexpected of being let go or being fired. The important thing is, you worked for that company, regardless of how long you worked from their skill set that brought you to that place that you have. And there's other opportunities around that's going to keep you moving. But it's important to be able to ground yourself internally first of who you are and what grounds you, so you can encounter the challenges that might be presented in your life that you might not be ready for. And as you encounter it, you got to find different channels of what's going to create that grounding for you, what's going to keep you moving. And you got to be able to lift yourself up, right? Like when something happens, you got to be able to pick yourself up. Like you don't want to continue to live in that space where you're just like, how could this be, man? I devoted all my time here. This stinks. What's wrong with me? Why all this stuff has to happen? When you start contemplating on the negative impact, you're never going to exceed and move forward, because the negative energy is actually bringing you down. You need to channel a different energy, a positive energy that's going to lift you up. And for me personally, my faith has been what grounds me in everything I do. I believe in God and I believe in Jesus, and that's kind of where I go to. I know everybody has their own belief system and where they go to, but that's where I go to. And a lot of my grounding is really that. When stuff like that happens, I'm able to kind of pick myself up and figure out next path. Another thing is the importance of having your own sandbox. Your skill set, your talent, beyond your 9-to-5 job, you got to know how it stands by itself. You got to have your own space where you experiment, you're trying it out outside of your 9-to-5, because what it does is it diversifies your ability to stay afloat if something happens where you don't have that 9-to-5 anymore, but you can still generate other income to keep you moving. It's great. Obviously, I'm not saying that you need to, not focus on your 9-to-5 job. You do need to focus on your 9-to-5 job, but you also need to figure out how does your skill set and talent stand by itself beyond your 9-to-5, because those skill set is yours. Your talent is yours. You're the one who's implementing it. And you got to be able to figure out, hey, how do I position myself? How do I commoditize on what I have to offer? And when that happens, when you have your own sandbox that you're experimenting in, when something like this happens, when you're let go or you're fired or something happens, then you can just transition in something different that allows you to still be at flow, because you're now selling your skills and talent to overcome the gap until you find that next move. So it's super important to be able to have your own sandbox. And thank you so much for tuning in to my podcast. Please share my podcast and let other people know about it. Always follow. I appreciate everybody that follows my stuff. And have a great day. Persevere to excel. Go get it.